What do Wilkinson's, the NHS and Kalina all have in common? They all have staff who need to be paid. This is Behind the Button. Hello and welcome to Behind the Button, the podcast that really lifts the lid on what goes on behind the scenes in the world of pay. I'm Laura Murphy, the CIPP's content editor, and I'm absolutely delighted to say that we've got somebody who's worked on the payroll at all three of those organisations here with us today. Welcome to the show, Clare Warrington.
Hello.
Here on Behind the Button, we ask our guests to leave a question for a future guest on the show. And I really like your question. It's all around balance in life. So we know payroll can be incredibly demanding and at times, let's be honest, stressful. So how do you ensure balance in your life in terms of, having a busy work life, but also balancing that with ensuring your mental and physical well-being?
I think it's really important because payroll can mean long hours. When things go wrong, you can't just 9 to 5 and clock off. You've got to go and make sure everybody gets paid. So for me, it's really important that drive home and coming home, you get rid of anything that's gone on in the day. You enjoy time with your family. You get out and walk or do any other activity that you want to do. I think it's really important just to shut down and not take home with you the problems of the day. And that's probably how I've got through, some really difficult situations within payroll, some stressful times, but it's about not taking that home with you and really kind of getting rid of that on the drive home and thinking work at work and home at home.
I love that, Claire, and I think it's so important to have that distinction, and a great tip there about using that commute, use that time to switch off, to wind down, so that when you do get home, that is your protected time. Definitely. Away from the busy work life. So you've given us a little bit of an insight into who you are outside of work, Claire, but I want to dig a little bit deeper. So what do you enjoy doing in your spare time when you're not busy?
So I've got 4 grandkids.
Lovely.
So really love spending time with them. We live in the country. We're very lucky to live in the country. So we've got a lovely big chocolate Labrador.
Oh.
So just walking, just love to be out in the fresh air. It doesn't matter what the weather, as long as you're dressed right for that weather. And just being able to get out in the countryside and walk is, I find that it clears my head, get some fresh air. And, that's just what I love doing.
Yeah, and I've seen your doggy, absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
I love dogs because they give you that excuse to get out and walk, which obviously helps with that whole mental well-being piece. So in the industry, Claire, you've become really well known for embracing the fun side of the profession. So you've gone to a lot of sort of the international payroll conferences, and I know you love to dress up. So I'd love to delve into that with you today and sort of ask you around, where does that playful side come from?
I think it's about getting involved. I think payroll is very serious. It's facts, it's figures, it's paying people, it's serious stuff. So I think I speak for a lot of payroll people when we kind of work hard, but we play hard as well.
100%.
So you've got to have that fun side. And I think as soon as I found out that there was a fancy dress party at the American conference, that was it really. It was like, my mind just goes into spirals of, what can we do? And I think the first year we did dress up, we went as Peaky Blinders.
Love it.
And we actually won first place.
Amazing.
And it was just fantastic. And it was a pure fluke that I picked Peaky Blinders. And obviously they are from Birmingham.
Yeah.
So it kind of really related to CIPP. So I think myself and Jason and even my husband Carl, dressed up and had an absolutely fantastic time. The second year we went, we decided on Minions, payroll Minions, because we have to have lots of hands on payroll sometimes. Carl went as Gru, and we actually got second place that year as well. So, it's just fun and just fun to dress up and kind of join in.
Yeah. And I bet those costumes then help with networking.
Definitely.
Because people come up to you and say, oh, I love your costume. And then you get talking about, broader payroll issues. So I think, that dressing up piece is really important for the networking side of things.
Absolutely. The amount of people that wanted to take photographs and then you get into conversations, it was really, really good. And I think we appeared probably on a lot of the pictures as well that came out from the Congress. So it was really good.
Yeah. And I did love seeing you all dressed as minions. I mean, was that your favourite outfit?
It was fun. Yeah, I did like Peaky Blinders as well. Not keen on the moustache. It was a little bit tickly. So probably Minions was a bit more practical to wear.
Yeah.
But yeah, really fun.
So keeping it on the fun side of things, Claire, I did see that you jumped on board with the recent AI trend where you sort of do a caricature of yourself. And I did notice that within that, handbags were very heavily featured. So would you say that handbags are a passion of yours, Claire?
Kind of. I do like bags. I just like shopping in general, really. But shoes, bags, clothes. I just love the whole... It sounds really bad, really, because I just love the whole experience of just going shopping and seeing new things. And yeah, I think I've tamed it down a little bit as I've got older. I think my husband would agree. When we first moved in together, I think I had 150 pairs of shoes. That has reduced now.
Yeah.
And I don't buy as many.
Yeah, that is an impressive collection, Claire. And I mean, that's coming from someone who loves shopping as well. I mean, I know when we had a catch up before today, I was saying to you that I'd had to sort of find a hiding place for my packages to hide from my other half how many packages are coming in, which is terrible, really. But yeah, I think we were talking about, when you go to these events and you are speaking, particularly at things like our annual conference and exhibition, you're in front of lots of people, you're getting photographed, so it's really important to look nice and to feel good in those clothes.
I think it's absolutely about feeling comfortable and feeling that when you see the photos and the videos and the social media posts that, you feel comfortable in the outfit you're wearing. I think as well, for those events, it's thinking about not having anything that clashes, knowing what Jason's wearing and that we're not going to clash and it's going to look okay. So yeah, I think it's really important. I think when you feel comfortable and you feel good in what you're wearing, then you're more confident to go out on stage and speak to the audience.
And I think that comfort comes across, doesn't it, when you're speaking? So yeah, and I think within that caricature as well, I noticed a huge smile on your face, and I know that you're really well known in the industry for always wanting to help people. So has that benefited you in your career, and specifically your career in the payroll industry?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I have a massive network of people that I know. I have a smiley face. I think, I even smile if I'm unhappy because I just think, it makes you feel better. Mm-hmm. And probably it has helped in my career because it's really funny. I had an away day with my board a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that came out was you're always smiling. No matter what goes on, you're always smiling. And I think, you've got to show to your team and you've got to show to your organisation that confidence that even when things are going wrong, you're under control. If you panic, everybody else panics. So I'm like the gliding swan that smiles about everything because, everything's got a solution. Don't panic. Everything's got a solution. Keep a smile on your face. And it works for me.
I love that, Claire. And that's a really good piece of advice. Sometimes presenting that air of feeling in control, that can then have a massive impact on the people reporting into you and the wider team.
Absolutely. I think if you stay calm, your team stay calm. If you panic, your team will panic. So it's all about, if you want to panic, go in another room and do that, but then come out with a smile on your face and with that solution. And it's don't panic. There's always a solution. Just think. While you're panicking, you can't think. Just think about what's my options, what are my solutions.
Yeah, and I think that's so important in payroll because obviously your decisions then have an impact on the pay people receive. So sometimes it is, like you say, taking that 5 minutes, taking a breather, not catastrophising and realising that whatever has potentially gone wrong can be resolved.
Absolutely. There's always a resolve to everything. While you're panicking, your brain won't think. So it's take a breath, get a coffee, sit down with the team, do some brainstorming. What can we do? What's the problem? what's the solution? How do we get to that solution? And it's really funny in a disaster or a problem how payroll people come together, and how people like our finance colleagues, our IT colleagues, our HR colleagues, they love that and they all want to join in with whatever that solution is. So it's really good, yes.
So I want to take it back to sort of the start of your career, because you have been in payroll for quite some time now. And you actually chose payroll as a career and in your teens. So what attracted you to the industry at first?
At first, I think I was attracted to finance, and I looked at financial jobs, and payroll that was called wages at the time was one of them. And I've got to be, totally honest, I didn't really know what that meant when I left school. I was 16 and nobody told you about getting paid and how you get paid, etc. I think we're still not brilliant at that today. But this opportunity came up. It sounded exciting. I loved reconciling figures. I loved figures. Maths was my thing. But when I actually went into payroll, it's not just about figures and facts and paying people. It's the social side as well. And I really love that. I think it's true. You go into payroll and you either love it and stay forever, or you hate it and you never touch it again.
Yeah. And it's true, we talk about other people falling. I mean, I know we say you chose, but a lot of people do end up falling into payroll. But then I always say, but they stay. And so many people that I know have worked in the industry so long and they absolutely love it. So yeah, I think the important thing sometimes is looking at the longevity of the career in payroll that you can have.
Definitely. And I think it's understanding that career that you can have. I started as a wages clerk back in the day. In fact, I started as a YTS, which was the youth training scheme at the time, a bit like the apprenticeship stuff we have today. Within Wilkinson's. And I went through the different stages, payroll clerk to team leader to manager. So did a breadth of things. But, that career in payroll is there. You can go many ways. So once you've got the base of payroll and you understand payroll, you can sell payroll, you can train payroll, you can audit payroll, you can project manage payroll. There's so many opportunities. It's, really, really good. And I think sometimes people just see somebody sat at a desk, making sure pay slips go out and answering queries. It's much, much more than that.
I think that's so important. The world really is your oyster in payroll. So 16-year-old Claire, when you went into that role at Wilkinson's, did you ever envisage that you'd be in the same sort of industry for a number of decades at that point?
When I first went in, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very old-fashioned at the time. When I first started, there wasn't even a computer on the desk. It was done by hand. And the people were really serious. So me coming in at 16 and I'm like a ball of energy, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to take things forward. And they're all kind of looking at me like, what is she on about? Is she mad? Really loved it. And I think payroll when I started was quite basic. When I say basic, I don't mean uncomplicated. I mean, we probably had base pay, salary, tax and NI and pension if you were lucky. They were the deductions on the payslip. Whereas when we look at a payslip today and the complexity, it's really changed. So I think had I been still sat doing the same job I was doing at 16, I probably would have looked for something else because I probably would have needed the next thing within, to keep me interested. But it's changed so much and evolved so much. And I've done so many jobs within the industry that, it keeps it exciting. And today, nearly 38 years on in payroll, I still find it exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's ever changing.
All the time. I mean, I think we discussed this beforehand. We have external influences always changing sort of payroll processes, but then organisations change and shift as well. So it's keeping up to date with, twofold of changes, maybe even threefold in some cases. And I think, certainly from my perspective, I think that's what keeps the industry exciting as well. Absolutely.
You've got to understand your technology. You've got to understand your people skills within your team. You've got to understand the training requirements. And, that can be a statutory change like the SSP from day one that came in April. It could be a system change. We're currently changing all our payroll systems at the moment, and that's changing the skill set of the team. And we've just relocated officers on top of that. So life doesn't stop just because there's a change, and you could see yourself faced with many changes at the same time. But it is communicating change, getting people engaged with change, taking them on the journey, that's the really important thing. And keep smiling.
Yeah. I love that you said bringing people on the journey, because I think that's so important. Sometimes people can be a bit wary of change, but once you explain to them what the benefits of that change is, they're much more likely to, as you say, join in with you and embrace that change.
Absolutely. I think just pushing a change on someone never works. It is about bringing your team or the organisation on the journey, keeping that communication really regular. Even if things aren't going well, I think even communicating bad news, it's a communication, and it makes people come on the journey with you. We all know about the change curve. There are times that I've had to, really hoist people up out of that change curve to get them over to the other side. And it is difficult, but it is about keeping them engaged, keeping the communication chains going, letting them be involved in this won't work because have we thought about this, really getting them involved. And I found that works so much more than enforcing a change on somebody.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's really good advice as well for anybody watching or listening who may be going through a period of change, who needs to bring people on board with them. So I want to sort of focus on Wilkinson's just for the moment. So you spent 14 years at Wilkinson's, which for a first role, that is a significant period of time. So was there anything that you learnt during your time there that you still apply in your day-to-day role today?
I always say that I was really lucky to start my career working for a retail organisation. Within retail organisations, they train everybody like they train their shop managers. So from 16, I went through rigorous training, how to present, how to interview, how to work in a team, how to problem solve. So much training, and I'm sure that's what's made me be as confident as I am today. Like, a lot of people don't like to present or talk in front of people, but I did that from 16. So I always thank Wilkinson's for the training they gave me back then, because it really did give me the foundations to go on and use my payroll experience to actually get on a platform and actually talk about that experience.
Yeah, that is lovely. And so glad that you had that sort of support at the beginning, because like you say, the confidence to speak and stuff, that can be really hard to come by. So it's great that you had a company that supported that sort of from the very start of your career journey.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, when I stand on a stage now, I take a breath before I get on, and there's always that little edge of nerve, but that makes it more exciting. Yeah. So, being focused on the subject you're talking about, who you're talking to. And I love to give back. Knowledge is not power. I want to share my knowledge with everybody. So I just love being centre stage and being able to talk about the thing that I'm passionate about, which is payroll.
Yeah, and that passion absolutely shines through, Claire. I've seen you speaking at a number of events, and I absolutely love that. So you went from Wilkinson's then to something very different, because you then went to the NHS. So you've gone from private to public sector. And within the NHS, I'm imagining the payroll setup, the contracts, the policies were extremely different. So how did you find that shift after spending quite some time at Wilkinson's?
I think it was really scary taking the plunge. So working somewhere for that length of time, never having worked anywhere else, I think it was a really scary thing to do. I decided that I'd got my private sector experience, so I wanted to get some public sector experience, and it's really difficult to get into the NHS when you're not in the NHS. But I got that opportunity to go and work for Sherwood Forest hospitals. And I remember turning up on my first day thinking, oh, well, I had 28,000 weeklies to deal with at Wilkinson's. There's 5,000 monthly people. How hard can it be? How wrong was I? Those 5,000 were so complex. The NHS had very complex terms and conditions at the time, lots of different spinal points, lots of different ways of working to what I've been used to. But the good thing when I started in the NHS was they were changing everything. So they changed the contracts through Agenda for Change. They then changed the system and they went onto the electronic staff record system. So in one instance, I didn't need to know the past. I just needed to know the future. And I think the good thing there was I was able to apply my experience of managing change, presenting, training, to really push us forward on those platforms. And we had some really successful implementations. I think when I first started in the NHS, people looked at me and was like, she doesn't know. She doesn't know the NHS. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But what I did know was I knew payroll. And I was able to talk payroll. And very quickly, I got them on board. And they took comfort in the fact that I did know payroll and what I was talking about. Yes, I didn't know the terms and conditions. I needed to learn that. But we kind of learned from each other. They knew the terms and conditions. I knew the statutory legislation. And we formed, really good working team there in the end. But it was very difficult at the time. But yeah, absolutely loved it in the NHS. It was fantastic.
And, I think you're a great example of when we talk about there are so many different opportunities in payroll. Every organisation has staff that needs to be paid and they will have very different setups. So, we don't often see payrolls that are the same. There are very different sort of things to process. And again, I think that's another thing that keeps the industry interesting and exciting because there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, every industry I've worked in has been totally different. I mean, I'm in logistics at the moment. Logistics, again, is volume, it's complexity, it's shifts, as the NHS was. So I think you're right. I think, you go into the different companies and depending on the industry, they are really, really different. So even moving industry within payroll is quite a big move. But as long as you've got your foundations, I think, you could go and do payroll, I believe, anywhere in the world.
You mentioned earlier about payroll being driven by people and livelihoods. So during your entire career in payroll, what have you learnt most about people, would you say?
I've learnt that people don't really ring you up on payday and say thank you. They tend to be ringing you because they want help. Pay is very emotive. It affects lives. And so one thing I have learned is it is about getting to a solution quickly. It's about getting to a solution for that person and fixing the problem that person has. And that could be from not understanding tax or national insurance to they think they've not been paid enough or they've not been paid at all. And one of the things I've learned is if you can get to that solution quite quickly, you kind of calm the person. There's mental health issues here as well, because if people haven't been paid correctly, they're worrying whether they can pay their mortgage, whether they can feed their children. So, we really have a really responsible job to make sure those people feel comfortable in what they're doing. And I always say, I say to my team, you've got to put yourself where they are. They could be driving a lorry, for example, and we don't want them worrying about their pay. We want to make sure their pay is correct, and where it has gone wrong, I want to get to a solution very quickly so they're feeling comfortable so they can concentrate on what they're doing rather than worrying if their pay's right. So that was a big thing for me. It wasn't about who's to blame. It wasn't about why did it happen. Get to the solution quickly for the individual, then look at what happened and what we can do differently to make sure that doesn't happen again.
And you touched upon a really important point there, Claire. I feel like payroll is being brought more and more into conversations about broader financial well-being, which is so important. You mentioned there you've got people driving. You don't want them to be stressing about debt or any money problems, which could then potentially have an adverse effect on their ability to drive. So I actually think the payroll conversations around financial well-being are really, really important.
Yeah, and I think it's about driving that within the payroll team as well. So when they are taking that query or that call, they're equipped to say, if somebody's struggling, they're upset, there's places you can point them within the organisation. So you're kind of acting as that guard and pointing people in the right direction to get that support, be that health, well-being or financial well-being. It's having somebody to talk to. And I think sometimes payroll are the agony aunt, but it's about listening, it's about understanding, and it's about helping people where we can across the industry.
Yeah, I think again, this like goes into the areas of all the different skills that pay professionals need, because we do focus a lot on the technical side, which obviously is really important, but it's that whole customer service piece. And you're right, Claire, when people are dealing with, staff that are upset, they need to be able to have that empathetic conversation with them, not necessarily giving them advice as such, because payroll professionals aren't necessarily qualified to give that, but maybe a bit of signposting and just an ear to somebody who is distressed.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and it can be distressing for the team as well. I mean, sometimes if somebody's dealing with a bereavement, or, they have got money problems, or, their mental health isn't good, it can affect the individual that they're talking to as well. And I'm really clear with my team, if they take a difficult call, we're there to support them as well, and help them through that. But yeah, I think it's really important, because a lot of the time, other than the manager, payroll are the first people that are talking to these people. So being able to give that advice and sort the situation quite quickly, I think is very important.
Yeah. I want to bring it back to you personally a little bit, Claire, if that's okay. So I know that you've completed a lot of CIPP qualifications, you've got a lot of letters after your name, but I also know that you've been a tutor and you've brought people through the same qualifications that you've sat through. So how does it feel having seen both sides of the coin? And how has it felt bringing people on that journey that you've already been through? Because I imagine that's quite emotive.
It is, yeah. I mean, my mum used to call me an eternal student, because if there was a training course or qualification, I was on it. And yes, I love learning. My brain's like a sponge. It just wants to take everything in. So I've loved my journey with the CIPP, doing the training, doing the qualifications. I think I got to a point where then I really wanted to give back. Like I say, I don't see knowledge as power. I really want to give back to the industry. So my opportunity was to pass on my knowledge through tutoring and training. And do you know what? There's nothing more rewarding and proud than seeing somebody you've trained walk across the stage at graduation. It's absolutely amazing. But seeing people come in year one, that was on the diploma, seeing people coming on year one and being that frightened, not sure if they could do this, it seems really difficult, to seeing them in year three and graduating a totally different person is just amazing. And I've had quite a lot of students over the years that I was tutoring, so really pleased, and some of them actually keep in touch. And I see them being payroll managers and going on that journey, and it's so rewarding. But being able to give back has been absolutely fantastic.
We hear a lot of that in this profession, that people are really grateful for the support they've had in their own career journeys, and they do want to give back. And like you say, watch people go from that timid individual who isn't quite sure what they're doing to this confident payroll manager. So we do hear quite a lot of that in the industry when we're speaking to people, which is great.
Absolutely. I always remember somebody saying to me when I did my master's in payroll, you're going to change your job, and you're going to change the way you think. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. It absolutely, year two, I changed my job. I went into a shared service centre for the first time, which was massive. I got divorced as well. So it does kind of change your life.
Yeah.
And it makes you think differently, and it makes you think, yeah, I can do this next step. But I think those qualifications as well have really helped me go on in my career and take that next step. You've got you as a person, you've got your knowledge and experience, but the qualification really gives you that extra bit to move on to that next step up.
Mm-hmm. And what I notice about you, Claire, is that you're so passionate about continuous improvement of yourself. And I know that, you've recently completed a stint as the CIPP's chair. So how do you think that's enhanced your network and your career, your time on the board?
I loved, when I joined board, I was like, I really wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be able to be a voice of payroll, so that when changes were happening within the CIPP, there was a voice in there. I could talk to members and bring members' thoughts back to the board and help move that forward. I think then becoming chair was probably the proudest moment I've had in my career. It was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And being able to stand and speak to people, stand on a stage and open conference. It's been a real journey. But for me personally, you know, just being there for the members and supporting the members and putting the members' views forward, being able to network with the members and chat about, you know, we've all got day jobs, so we've all got the same problems going on, but being able to chat about that and, you know, how we can influence it and how we can make a difference has been absolutely amazing. I've loved every minute of being chair and now past chair. So.
Yeah. And I love that you drew upon the payroll community and the network, which is phenomenal. Like you say, often people are facing the same challenges. So it's really, really nice to then get together with like-minded people who might be able to give you advice on the same challenge that they're facing. So I do think that the payroll community is fantastic. It's one of the things I love about working in the industry.
Absolutely. And I think the other edge to that really is working with the other board members and obviously the CEO of CIPP. And it's really made me, I've been on board about 7 years now, and it's really made me think more strategically, which has helped me in my career progression as well, because I've been able to think payroll and link it to strategy, which has been a real booster in my career.
Brilliant. So we've talked a little bit about sort of your early days in the payroll industry, and now I want to bring it into today. So you're currently responsible for payroll. Is it around 17,000 colleagues?
About 6,500, 17, yeah.
So a big number of staff, basically.
Yes.
So what changes when you're operating at that sort of scale?
I think you've got to think wider because within Kalina, we have many different companies with all different terms and conditions and entitlements. So you've got to be very adaptable to the different situation. One thing doesn't fit all. While you try to standardise across your payrolls, you've got to think you can standardise on certain things, but other things you can't. And I think it's just being very organised, very focused on change, what's coming in, how that impacts. So, yeah, I think it's really important to adapt your style to the different people that you're working with.
Yeah. And that brings me nicely onto sort of another topic area I wanted to cover, which is the more sort of reward and benefit side of things. You mentioned there, you know, there is no one size fits all approach. And I think that's particularly true with reward packages. So I know that you've been involved with modelling what reward packages look like, and you've spoken to all different levels of seniority within the business, whether that's, you know, manager, director level. So what are you seeing people want most from their total reward package, and are you having to vary it from person to person?
I think that the reward packages look very different to what they did quite a few years ago. I think we used to, very much in the industry, we used to fit one package to everyone. So at a certain level, you'd go and you'd get a car allowance or a car, you'd get PMI, you know, your private medical, and you'd get a pension. And I think today, you know, the youngsters coming in today, that's not what they want. And although I'm not responsible for reward at Kalina, I do work alongside the head of reward. And, you know, we're very much looking at personas at the moment, and personas of different age groups. And within those age groups, we're really seeing something very different about what they're wanting. Somebody young coming in doesn't necessarily want private medical, they want a gym membership. So we're doing a lot of work at the moment on those personas to say what makes us attract and retain across all age groups, because we don't want to change something and our, you know, older age group that doesn't suit them. So really looking at those personas of what people want, and that changes as you go through your career, and as you get older and you're coming more into the retirement area, it will change what you want. So it's really having that flexibility to flex the packages that you offer to people.
Yeah, it makes me laugh when people say, you know, payroll is boring or straightforward, because look at all these different moving plates we're dealing with. As we said, constantly dealing with change, but also dealing with, different generations all working together in one organisation and making sure that we cater to them. Because with things like pay slips, I'm sure they want to consume their pay slips in different ways. Like you say, the older demographic, they may be more used to the manual paper pay slips, whereas the younger sort of working population probably want it on demand online now. So there are so many different things to consider all the time.
Not just the benefits and rewards that are coming in, but like you say, the way people are being paid. And I know earned wage access is a big thing. It's something we don't have in place at the moment, but it is something that we're looking at. But when I talk to colleagues across my network, some of the feedback that's coming back from that earned wage access is absolutely fantastic. And a lot of it is people aren't using it. They just like the security of it. So, I think, we've got to think very different to what we did 20 years ago. And we've really got to adapt our styles and ways to meet today's workforce.
Yeah, so earned wage access is one of those areas that I think is growing in popularity. And one thing we can't avoid is AI. So I wanted to ask you sort of how AI and automation is impacting payroll in your current position and maybe where you see it going in the future.
So I think AI for the last 3 years has really been kind of growing legs, and everybody wants to get on the AI platform. I think within Cleaner at the moment, AI is a big thing for us, not just in payroll, but across our network. So we're looking at how we can use AI in a lot of different areas of our business. For me in payroll, it's really thinking about how do I remove the repetitive things? How do I get my team just working, talking to people, answering queries, being out on sites to be seen face to face? How do I free up that resource? So what can I change to automate or, get some robotics in place so we can, get rid of people sat keying or moving data that they don't need to. So there's some of the areas we're looking at the moment. I do use it quite a lot at the moment for writing policies, writing letters. If I need to do a memo, I'll kind of say, this is what I want to say, make it sound really good or make my words sound really easy to understand, because when I'm talking to drivers and warehouse people, payroll speak can be very complicated. Legislation is very complicated. How do you say it a lot easier? AI does help with that. It is funny at times, some of the things it comes out with, but, it kind of gives you that start for 10. So we are very much introducing kind of Copilot into our kind of email system, and we are looking at other platforms and other ways of working better and using AI to do that.
And when you're talking about AI, I can see you're passionate about it. But also, I think it makes things sound so much more exciting, like removing those repetitive tasks so that you can go and speak to people, so that you can use your payroll knowledge to the best of its ability. I think, AI creates some really exciting opportunities for pay professionals.
It does. And I think, at first when AI was mentioned, people are scared that means job losses.
Yeah.
That means that companies are going to reduce the workforce and a robot's going to be doing my job. That is absolutely not the case. And if we think back 20, 25 years ago, we had the same thing when we talked about automating timesheets, automating expenses. We were scared about that. But actually, the operators still need to be there to ensure the legislation is done right, to check and audit what's coming out the other end. AI will only do what you tell it to do, and if you don't tell it the right thing, it's going to do it wrong. So I think we more again become the auditors, the checkers, the compliance people, but also it gives us the time to speak to our people and be able to be there, as we said in the beginning, to talk to people and make sure that issues and problems are resolved quickly.
Yeah, and a key theme that we see is, AI still needs those guardrails in place, which you've just touched upon. It's dealing with something as important as an individual's pay. So we need to make sure that it is doing as it should. So there'll always be that place for people to, as you say, audit it and make sure that it's doing things as it should be doing them.
Absolutely. I mean, even if I write a letter in Copilot at the moment, you've got to read through it because sometimes it can say something and I really didn't want to say that. So, yeah, I think, AI is just going to get rid of the resource intense key in, transferring data. You know, how many times do we work on spreadsheets or analyse spreadsheets where you can get AI to say, summarise it, tell me, you know, what this is. And then we can go and spend that time, you know, talking to our workforce and dealing with the problems that we have out there.
So I know that another passion of yours, Claire, is sort of lean working practices and streamlining efficiencies in the payroll department. So outside of AI, what other sort of things have you implemented?
I love continuous improvement. I think we're always improving. I think when we engage with change, there's always a chance to make improvements. So be it from processes, so mapping out processes, getting rid of the waste. You know, it's amazing how you can think, right, I do this process, I can't make it any easier, I can't do it any quicker. And then you sit down and you kind of get your Post-its out and you map it out around the room, and then you take out some of the waste, and actually all of a sudden a 3-hour task is an hour task. So I think, you know, continuous improvement is in all of us, and that kind of vision to see that we can do things better. So I always encourage it within my teams, looking at, you know, just because we do it one way doesn't mean it's always got to be that way. I actively suggest that they make improvement suggestions if they think we can do it better. If they just think something's taken me a long time, Claire, and I'm not really sure why, and I don't have the answer, let's talk about it. Let's have a look why it takes a long time. So I think even, you know, in the office and the office layout, you know, if that can be better, if the visuals can be better, we have a wall in our office that kind of tells us all the payrolls that are going through, where they're at, what needs to be done when, who's on holiday, you know. So at a visual, you can look on that board and see, are we doing okay? Actually, do we need to have a think about doing some things a bit differently or a bit quicker? So, you know, I think it's really important within the office that, you know, continuous improvement is really pushed forward, and it's just a passion of mine. Just doing things easier and quicker has got to be better.
And your eyes absolutely lit up when you were talking about that, Claire, so I can feel the passion dripping from you when it comes to continuous improvement, which you're quite right. If we can do something faster and quicker, then why shouldn't we? So we mentioned earlier about the outfits at the international conferences you've been to, but when you have attended sort of those events, what challenges but also opportunities are you seeing that payroll professionals are facing across the globe that isn't just confined to the UK?
So as we've talked about, AI has been talked about in all the conferences for the past 3 years. So I think that's a big thing. And I think that's a challenge we all share together, because even though our regulations and legislation are different, AI is the same thing. I think the other common denominator really is kind of change management, and also, you know, process improvements. They're the things that actually we all have the same issues. Leadership styles, the way we manage our teams is the same across the globe. Mm-hmm. So really, payroll, I don't want to say a small part is legislation and regulation, but actually the bigger piece is that continuous improvement, AI, leadership, management, change management. That's the same across the globe. And that's really a big part of our world. You know, I say payroll is really a social platform because we get to talk to everybody in the company. So, you know, I think that is a really big piece. And I think those challenges are shared across the globe.
And it's really interesting that you've noticed that. And I think it's really important that we continue to strengthen those relationships across the world so that we can all come together to help one another to face those sort of challenges that everybody's facing.
Absolutely. I mean, and, you know, we all have global payrolls, or a lot of people have global payrolls. So when we have visited countries outside of the UK, you know, we have got people coming up to us and saying, oh, I run a UK payroll, can you help me with this? So not just the networking with, you know, the other organisations, but also people that are facing challenges on UK payrolls that maybe have got very few people to talk to in country, but actually seeing somebody that's come from a UK membership organisation and being able to reach out has been really, really good.
I know as well, Claire, when we caught up before today, you were saying to me how you're really keen to pass the baton on to the next generation of payroll professionals. So what do you think we should be doing to attract those younger people into the payroll industry?
So, yeah, I'm, believe it or not, coming up to retirement in 5 years and counting. Not that I don't love my job and love the industry, but I'm ready to take some more walks with the dog. But I have always been for giving back. Yep. I've always been knowledge is not power. And, I think, you've got to bring people in and train them. What I would look for in a payroll person is somebody that's got that energy, that flair, that passion to learn. And you can't always sit somebody within your team that comes fully qualified with a lot of experience. You've got to, bring somebody in sometimes that you're going to take on that training journey. And I think that's really important, because how do people get into payroll? How do new people get into payroll? And that might be somebody coming out of school, coming out of college, coming out of a job or a career that they picked that they no longer enjoy. How do those people get on the bottom ladder? And I think we've just got to look for the other skills as well. I've talked about today, I won't take away the regulation and the legislation complexity that we have to deal with, but then there's a big part of our job that is that talking to people, training, guidance, being able to write letters. There's other skills as well. So think about those skills when you're bringing somebody in new, and give people that opportunity to come in and learn, and maybe put them through the qualification within your organisation. Really kind of grow your own. And that's what I would be encouraging other organisations to do. And then we do give all of these people an opportunity to come into the industry, because it's a fantastic industry to be in. I would not change my career for anything. I would not go back and be something different. I've loved it, every minute of it.
That's so lovely to hear, Claire. And I think you're right. We do need those people with that passion and that fire in their belly, because you almost can't train that. You can take people along the qualification journey and you can teach them the technical side, but really that passion and that fire is almost innate.
Absolutely. And I think it's about bringing these people in and showing them, yes, it's hard work, but look how much fun we have.
Yeah. So looking back, Claire, if you could do your time all over again, what advice would you give to 16-year-old Claire who was just embarking on her journey at Wilkinson's?
I'd say follow your heart. I'd say look at what you enjoy doing. So at the time, 16-year-old me loved maths and loved working with figures, probably loved money as well. So, enjoy what you're doing. I love talking to people. So that's another thing. But go into your career, totally give it a try. Because, not everybody likes payroll. It's not for everybody. But if you don't, then you've got lots of other areas you can branch off into. Finance, HR, IT, all of these are kind of back office services that you could actually move across to. So my advice would be give it a go. Yeah. If you don't like it, you can move on to other things. And even if you came into payroll for a few years, it does give you a lot of skills to go on and do a lot of different things. In the same respect, if you're in a different career, come and try payroll. Give it a go if you get that opportunity. I know a lot of people in industry maybe go to work in finance and end up doing the payroll. Give it a go. It is interesting. It is more interesting than just pressing a button, definitely, and a payslip going out. There's much more to it.
100%. And, I'm really glad that you touched upon those transferable skills, because there are so many that you learn in payroll, and equally, like you said, that you can bring from other professions into this role. So I think that's so important.
Yeah, really important, because I think people do move around within the same organisation. And I think a lot of people, it's just the opportunity that's come up. But what I would say is, if you get an opportunity and it is something you're interested in doing, definitely go and give it a go. There's a lot more to it than you think. And, I've enjoyed every minute I've spent in payroll. I couldn't be anywhere else. I couldn't go anywhere else.
I can't imagine you anywhere else, Claire. So I've really enjoyed our time together today, Claire. Thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Button. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Absolutely loved it, Laura. Thank you.
Brilliant. I have one last favour to ask of you, if that's okay, Claire. So would you be able to leave us a question for a future guest on Behind the Button, please?
Yeah, absolutely. My question would be, what inspired you to get involved with the CIPP and do a podcast?
That is a brilliant question. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
And if you haven't already, hit subscribe or follow Behind the Button on your favourite podcast player. And if you're watching us on YouTube, tap the like button, drop us a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've got any questions for us, suggestions for future guests, or want to tell us your own payroll story, we'd love to hear from you. Just email behindthebutton@cipp.org.uk. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.